I got Miss Shop came back once again. Subtitle video. How Disney has portrayed its own sequel trilogy just to live off nostalgia. What do you mean? The sequels are garbage. I personally don't care what anybody says. I still believe to this day that The Force Awakens was a strong start. Introduced some interesting concepts, but it re-traveled the past. We don't want to play that game. You honestly don't want to play that game. Because from that same logic, well, let's play it one for one. Luke end up on a desert, Anakin stays on a desert. It is what it is. But I personally believe the sequel trilogy, at the beginning, The Force Awakens, 2015, had tons of potential. Finn, Rey, Poe Nathaniel, and especially with the likes of Kylo Ren and Supreme Leader Snoke. Very strong potential. Then of course we all know The Last Jedi came out 2 years later, and 2 years after that Rise of Skywalker came out, and it just it did what it did. Now some might say, why would I bring this up? Because at least when George Lucas, you could say whatever you want with the prequels, George tried to flesh out the prequels multiple times. Whether you want to say with Genndy Tartakovsky's miniseries, we want to say with the books or the games or the comic books, he tried everything he could to flesh out the prequels as much as he can. Whether people liked him or not, he tried. He put in the effort. With extended media, with games, with TV shows, he did everything he could to flesh out the world he created for years. With the Clone Wars miniseries, with the books and the extended universe books, with the games, whether it's Force Unleashed, whether it was the Bounty Hunter game with Jango Fett, whether it was Rogue Squadron, so on and so on. He tried to flesh out the prequels. Well, not Rogue Squadron. It was called like Jedi Fighters. I believe it was called like Advanced Jedi Fighters, something like that, for the prequels. Rogue Squadron was for the initial trilogy, 1 through 5 or 6. But at least George tried, right? He put in the efforts, put in the work, and he tried to make you invested in the prequels. And eventually, some people came around, other people's not so much. Other people was able to appreciate the prequels for what they were, and other people to this date would argue the sequel trilogy was better, based on what merit. I can break down the entirety of The Last Jedi and say it was mostly pretty much garbage. All it did was character assassinate and waste time. Rise of Skywalker was even worse. Because there were so many ideas. Well, Captain Phasma could never replace Boba Fett. Well, that's your problem. If they would never, the character could have been its own thing. But it was never fleshed out. There is no Captain Phasma spin-off show. There's no Captain Phasma comic book. There's just Captain Phasma. That's it. Same thing with Finn growing up. I think it was implied through like a comic book or something, but there's no extra Finn backstory where we get to see him and his connection to the guy. He kept saying, I think his name was like something, it's called Nines. Traitor! I cannot love it. And Finn, a person with seemingly no real force abilities, using a lightsaber and just going out there and just doing the best he could. It was incredible. Did it retread the same past with some elements? Of course it does. But then again, in hindsight, does everybody want to use hindsight to hate? Well, wouldn't it only make sense that it would retread the past? You know, kind of like how Palpatine tried to remake the Death Star for a second time. But crookeds, right? I said Snoke is confirmed to be a Palpatine clone and confirmed to be controlled by Sidious. Why wouldn't Sidious just try to upgrade his plans and try to make another Death Star? Like, do you see what I mean with the whole retread thing, right? In context, it does make sense whether you like it or not. Because if Palpatine is behind this is the same Palpatine that tried to remake the Death Star 3 different times. But we're not going to talk about that, right? Okay. But overall, I believe there's tons of potential, especially if they would have fleshed out Supreme Leader Snoke like they're supposed to. And they should never introduce the Palpatine idea. Palpatine should have just stayed dead. If Supreme Leader Snoke would have grew up during the era of Jedi, where they want to say he was fossilized from the High Republic, or he was there with the Clone Wars, and he had his own personal hatred against the Jedi and for what they did and how they handled the Separatist conflict, how they got played and everything, well, potentially could have led to his own planet being destroyed. It would have fed into that hatred. to where he don't want the death of the Jedi, but he want to exterminate all Force users and create a galaxy without them. That is taking it to a different level. That is hatred to a different degree. So that's why Supreme Leader Snoke would not be a Sith, but he does use the dark side to his own means. It explains what he means by Kylo Ren got to go finish his training, because his training is not the traditional marriage of training. It's different. His beliefs are different. The way he used the Force and his viewpoints on it is different from everybody else. And some might say, how are you going to wipe out all Force users if Snoke is one and Kylo Ren is one? There's kind of hypocrisy in it. That's kind of the thing. But in that case, it would lead to a much better backstory than, well, Snoke is just another clone. Which goes into another thing, right? Before we continue to address the clone thing with Supreme Leader Snoke, is the fact that, because there's a lot of world building that needs to be had to explain how the First Order really came to be. And why would the New Republic, instead of just, just taking over those planets, or try to accept the Imperial planets into the New Republic without any real problems, but that's not going to cause any issues. It is what it is. It is what it is. That's what I've heard. I could be wrong, but it's just, as much work are they putting in on Andor to try to explain, well, how the rebellion came up and how. I don't care about seeing the same thing. We've already seen this. We've already seen this fleshed out. We already know how the resistance came up 5 different times. We've already seen this same thing happen again and again. I don't need to know how at 1200 times how the resistance became to be. I don't need to see what happened post that. Well, you know what? The Mandalorian and Luke Skywalker, they've done everything to not feed into the sequel trilogy. They've done everything to not flesh out Palpatine's bloodline, to especially not flesh out the Knights of Ren. The closer we get is a comic book that's just a comic book. What I mean by it's a comic book, it's not a comic book made to be a comic book. It's a comic book just to convey information, and that's why I don't know, it's just, cause you know those tie-in comics that exist where it's supposed to be in a tie-in comic, but it's just pictures and words. It doesn't flow like, it doesn't use the comic medium to its fullest extent. It's just to tell a story. I don't know, but then again, everybody make comic books differently. But we get all that explanation instead of having a Knights of Ren TV show with Ben Solo, Adam Driver. We get a few comic books most people are not going to read, and that's it. I'm going to get a series about a young Luke starting the new Jedi Order, what caused him to eventually try to kill his own nephew, and Ben Solo. No, we don't get that. We don't get it followed up on what happened with the Yoda child Goro. We'll get any of that 30 years later, where he's at. 30 years later, what he's doing. We get none of that. What is Ahsoka doing in the sequel trilogy? Crickets. But we got all this time, right, to go back into the past, to retrace the prequels, to go to the High Republic, to explain how the Resistance rides up again. It's just like, are we going to fill in those 30 years in between the Return of the Jedi and the Force Awakens? Are we going to do that? Is that ever going to be addressed? Are we going to flesh out that time period, huh? Even then, you could flesh out the First Order in that sequel trilogy. Well, how does the full operation works? How long has General Hux been a spy this whole time? How long? You can flesh that stuff out. You can flesh out the sequel trilogy bounty hunters and how that whole thing works out. And the pirates and everything going on with the New Republic. Why do that? Another case, we have a 2-year time skip in between The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi. Never elaborated on, never fleshed out. There is no, well, how the Resistance got so and so, and how the New Republic was obliterated. There is no real blowback from that. There is no real addressing what happened. It's just on to the next, guys. So if you want to say, well, Disney didn't believe it had no script, they could have at least tried. They honestly could have tried to do something. They really could. But what did they choose to do? They take the easy route. They chose to boycott everything on nostalgia. Give us a Book of Boba Fett. Give us a Kenobi show. Give us an Ahsoka TV show. After they butchered Season 7 of Clone Wars and made it the Ahsoka show. Give us Tales of the Bounty Hunters, the Tales of the Underworld, where we can follow Cad Bane and his side adventures. So we're never gonna get that episode with the side adventures teaming up with Count Dooku, huh? And getting chased by the bounty hunters. That's never gonna happen, right? We're gonna get an episode system miniseries that's no longer canon of how General Grievous was able to capture Counselor Palpatine in this new canon. Since we made the Clone Wars all about Ahsoka now. Crickets, right? And that goes to my biggest problem. Disney made no attempt at all to actually, give fans the reasons to actually care about the sequel trilogy. The closest we got post that is like The Mandalorian, and like, I think that's it. The Rebel Alliance, and the Book of Boba Fett take place after that. After the whole, around the same point of The Mandalorian, just as Ahsoka, but it's not leading into the First Order and the New Republic. It just gives him a few hints here and there, and that's it. I'm sorry, that's not good enough. It's not good enough, no. You gotta flesh out there's a lot of things you gotta flesh out, especially with Luke Skywalker, to explain his actions in The Last Jedi, to explain why he left when the galaxy needed him the most. Crickets. No explanation. What was going on Kashyyyk during this time period? With all the Wookiees? What was going on during that time period? Crickets. Y'all can say whatever you want about George Lucas and how he ran the prequels and so on, but at least you try to make you investing. At least you try to make you believe in this whole new era of Star Wars. What has Disney done? Nothing. They done none of the legwork and keep going back to the past with some love and nostalgia. We gotta look, boys. The nostalgia sell, don't it? Don't it? So the best part about it, right? We're gonna get an Ahsoka season 2. I guarantee you, none of that stuff will lead to the First Order. I guarantee you that. Well, Thrawn was a part of the First Order Council. Never gonna happen. Because it's really with the Knights of Ren, and how they really butchered Kylo Ren as a character. That's really sad. Any type of investment you have in that first movie of buying into this evil solo child, of buying into the child that Luke was unable to save, it's all just thrown out the window because Snoke was killed by a lightsaber that somehow he was not paying attention to. Because some idiot thought that was funny. And Disney read this script and said, okay, let's put it out. So who's going to be the main villain for the next movie? Huh? And then Rey being just a nobody, which could have been a more powerful story about self-discovery, have turned into, well, she's the daughter of Palpatine. Out of all of the Force-sensitive people throughout the galaxy, out of all the billions or trillions of people that exist, to remember, just because the Jedi was wiped out does not mean Force sensitives would just stop born. If you have any Force powers, and anybody see it, I'm gonna call that 1-800 Stormtrooper line and get you shot up. 1-800, I'm snitching, get him out of here. So, which goes into why the Inquisitors don't work in my opinion, because besides from Vader being this Jedi killing machine, right? Besides from that, it makes Order 66 seem less effective than it's implied it is. It's implied like a good 90% of the Jedi are dead. And that's after most of them got killed on Geonosis. So even more Jedi died across the galaxy, unanimously. So, I don't know where the Inquisitor, like we got like 10 extra people to hunt down Jedi. Why? When most of them were wiped out. Like, who are they chasing down? Who? We got this brand new Jedi person that just showed up out of nowhere. How did they survive? Well, this just all just wasn't on Coruscant. Does this all just so happen to have no clone troopers? Coincidentally, right? All of them just so happen to get away, right? Okay. Just by pure coincidence, right? Pure coincidence. That it just so happened that, you know, that we're on Coruscant, that was nowhere to be found. Like, I'm gonna believe that. Let's stop the bull. Stop. Same reason why I didn't like Jedi Survivor and that whole Jedi Master going life and death with Vader. It's just, ma'am, nobody know who you are. Ma'am, who are you? Who? Who? Well, you don't got to be this known person to take on Vader. You kind of do. You know, it's kind of like how people don't like the depiction of General Grievous, and it's kind of just like when most of his encounters is with Obi-Wan Kenobi, there is no instance where Grievous can kill Kenobi or Anakin. There's none. There's no instance where that happens. So of course he's gonna run away. Same way how he can't kill Kit Fisto because he gotta survive until Revenge of the Sith. So there's nothing General Grievous can do with the characters he's giving in the Clone Wars. He can't kill off named characters. So what is he supposed to do? He can kill off a Padawan or the Night Sister by the plot. They're not making up new Jedis for this man to slaughter. They're not. Plo Koon got to survive the Revenge of the Sith. Every main Jedi character in the Clone Wars TV show from 2008 has to survive to Episode 3. There's nothing General Grievous can do. So it's just like who is this person going life and death with Vader? No one knows how she can do so well. Well, but Starkiller, now we want to believe the actor himself. Sam Witwer saying that Vader was not going all out on Starkiller in both of the games, and which is why if Starkiller was canon, how did Vader escape from Starkiller? So, whether you want to believe that it's canon or not, that is an actor himself who's worked with Dave Filoni and worked on the Force Unleashed games, saying that Starkiller was getting toyed around with Vader. So, should we stay on with the unbelief? But Cal Kestis is a better character. Well, because I don't see how, besides from the fact that, you know, he was a Padawan of someone else. He survives. He meets some other characters, and he starts to make his own lightsaber, and so on and so on. It's. I don't even hate the guy. I don't see the extra hype. I think he's all right. But it is what it is. Overall, back to the main point. Instead of Disney trying to make the fans invested in a sequel trilogy, they're just going to act like it doesn't really happen. But they're going to make these new movies with Daisy Ridley, though, right? Potentially, maybe so, maybe not. And it's just like there's a bunch of Star Wars projects coming out that just don't mean anything. Well, does every story have to mean something? No. But it's just, there's stories that no one cares about, in my opinion. I don't need another, like, 20 episode show explaining the remnants of the Empire. The Empire is dead. Their last surviving front was the Battle of Jakku. Where was all these other Imperials when, you know, when they was needed the most? Crickets, right? There was nowhere to be found, right? But they keep popping up left and right? Just like how Star Wars Battlefront 2 story is garbage. Now I just saw something, but story isn't good. It isn't good. So it's just, I don't know, man. Well, all I can say is I try. And it's just not trying. It's like no one's gonna remember the Skeleton Crew. It's just, it is what it is. Star Wars is where it's at because of complacent fans and Disney not caring to invest any bit into the universe they help add on to. They're just going to act like it didn't happen. They're going to keep bringing back characters from the past because it makes them money, and they're set and complacent with that. But Boba Fett met Cal Caskus. I don't care. What would have been more interesting is that why can't we get a game post all this stuff? I'm sick of seeing the same stormtroopers. I'm sick of seeing the same characters over and over again. I'm supposed to be hyped. I don't feel nothing. I don't, because I've seen this already. We already know what happens in 30 years. But that haven't stopped you from looking at the prequels and so on and so on. You're missing my point. This stuff adds on nothing to the sequel trilogy. And especially since they're trying to act like it's still canon. So it's just... it is what it is. But at the end of the day, I hope you guys can understand my point, how Disney had put in no effort to make anyone care for the sequel trilogy, to add on to the sequel trilogy, to explain certain things, especially like the Knights of Ren. What was the current state of the galaxy at that moment? It's just, well, you know, just the First Order kind of just showed up and, you know, so on and so on. What were the early days of the First Order like? With Snoke, with Kylo Ren, and the rest of his Imperial officers. One of the most interesting twists they can make, even though I have a hard time to explain it, is whether they turn Thrawn into a supercomputer for Snoke, or somehow Snoke is able to, or Thrawn is able to live long enough to be the previous general of the First Order until, you know, he dies of old age, and, you know, General Hut has to take over. That would be interesting. That he's the final backbone of the Imperials, of the Emperor forces, and he's able to get transferred over to the First Order. That would be amazing. But I hope you guys like the video, like, comment, subscribe, and what do you guys thoughts about the whole Disney not investing in the sequel trilogy and not trying to explain anything or doing anything with it, and just trying to continue to milk everything that came before? And the fans being complacent and saying, that's great. I don't care about seeing some stuff. I've seen the Rebellion founded 5, 6, several different times. Is it Rebels? Is it Grand Mothma? Is it Andor? Is it all these things? Sick of this. Are we going to get a proper Finn backstory? Are we going to flesh out that in the early days? Nope, they're not going to have. So it is what it is. Hope you guys like the video. Like, comment, subscribe, and peace.